Welcome. If you're just joining us, welcome to the CU Digital Town Hall. A little background. Mike and I, when the pandemic first hit, we watched everybody scramble. Things were just starting to freak out. And somewhere right in those first few weeks of lockdown, I said, you know what, Mike, what if I just use Zoom? Because we had, the Zoom platform we've had forever. You and I have both used that forever. And I remember when it was new. Remember when we used to have to, the beginning of these calls, explain where chat was?
Yeah, exactly.
And explain how to switch your view and things like that.
Yeah.
It's
now everybody's a PhD in Zoom.
Well, now it's a verb, right?
Exactly.
So
are you going to Zoom?
Let's Zoom, and that's always been sort of the litmus test as to whether or not something has become prolific, right? I'll just Venmo you, and certainly Zoom falls into that category.
Can you Xerox that for me?
Xerox was a great one.
Back a few years.
There's a couple of those sort of idioms out there that are
just Google it.
Just Google it. Yeah, Google's a verb. So here we are. We said let's pull this together, and we had a tremendous turnout, and we just kept going because it turns out, as I've always said, one of the superpowers of the credit union industry is collaboration. And I can't tell you how many nice emails I've ever got. And I know you get them too, from people saying, oh, I went back and I looked at this or I looked at that. It wasn't us. It was one of the other members on the call. It was a Jonathan Soddy or Thomas O'Shea or any other number of folks who have piped in. But guess what, Mike? You know what we couldn't do this with? Who we couldn't do this without?
Our sponsors.
No, you, Mike. It's
what?
The next slide.
No,
you gotta remember, the next slide is always a picture of me and you.
It's
always a picture of me and you. You got to get that through your head.
Okay.
So Mikey has been a friend since before he ever started the video side of this.
Indeed, sir,
we used to write things together, and I've been very fortunate to be travel the world with him. Really, Austria, Singapore.
Yeah,
we've been a few places. I remember you ate that bad octopus and went on that trip. That was weird. For like a couple hours, he thought he was Patrick from SpongeBob.
That was fun.
Fun. And see, I told you not to eat the octopus in Singapore, but you weren't listening. The bratwurst in Austria was great. The bratwurst was fantastic, but
Singapore bratwurst?
No, Austria.
Oh, Austria. I'm like, what?
Anyways, my name's John Best, and I am CEO and co-founder of the Best Innovation Group. Right now, we're doing a ton of the strategy type sessions, which Alan just showed up and gave me a free commercial for. So thank you, Alan. We're also doing a lot of work on SDKs for credit unions, working in Alchemy, Bono. Did I say that right? Bano. Bono's a bathroom. Bano, and Q2 and other platforms, as well as doing a lot of research on robotic process automation, and of course our innovation club, of which True West is a great member, a very heavily participating member, where we talk about things like crypto and go over a lot of new stuff. So it's been a really great year so far. And Mike, you deliver somehow, and I don't know how you do it, like 6 new videos a day. Pretty sure that you're at this point just splicing together old ones and using deep fakes. I don't know. But somehow you have the most content that and it's not just content to be content. It's great content. It's something I would encourage everybody to watch. So
thank you. We just had True West on. I'm looking at my thing. We just had True West on in July.
Wow,
that's right.
Very cool.
Chris Kearney on about payday comes early for members at True West. So that was a good
Which is exactly what Chime is trying to make their big play on. We were talking about that in the offsite. What are all these great secrets of credit unions that others are now touting as these exemplary features when they've always been features of credit unions? It's good and bad. It's a yin and the yang. Let's get to our sponsors. And again, we'll do this the way we've been doing it. I'll start. Sure. So CUNA Council's coming up, CUNA Tech and Ops. I'll be doing the fireside chat with my son, Ryan, talking about 5 things you didn't know about millennials. You know what the first one is?
What?
They don't like you. That's the first one.
That's a bummer.
It was a surprise to me too. And here's the best part. Even if you're not, they call everyone boomer. So that's another one. So
really?
Oh yeah. Everyone's a boomer. That's referring to the
generation.
Boom. Yeah, that particular generation. I'm
an X.
So
I'm an X.
I'm an X as well. You and I are both X's. Yeah.
Yep.
And then there's the lost one of the Y. We don't know what happened to them. But anyways, CUNA has a council. If you've got a job at the credit union, let's say you're the facilities manager of just, the women's bathroom. You could go to the facilities manager's women's bathroom conference, which I believe is held in May in Las Vegas.
That's good.
I'm being funny, but they do literally have something for everyone. I don't care where you are in the credit union, and they push a lot of really incredible things. So visit them at www.cuna.org, and they just re-upped as one of our sponsors, which is really cool. So we thank them for that.
Right on.
And I'll be doing roundtables and other things, facilitating that as we go along, just like I've been doing all year.
That's a good group.
All right. So what's this next one?
Correlation?
Correlation. That's them. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, it's the combination of core and relation, if you can see that in the logo there. But that's beside the point. Correlation, one of the hottest core processors in the credit union land, and they are hot for a reason, because they have the latest greatest technology, open architecture, where any type of third-party vendor can basically plug and play into the core. So that gives credit unions a lot of freedom in which to operate and choose which direction they want to go, especially down the fintech road. So Correlation, they do some fantastic work. Not only is the technology great, but the client service is second to none as well. So they just they got all the bases covered. Just a fantastic group of people there at Correlation doing some fantastic work and some cutting edge, pardon the 90s term, but some cutting edge work as well. So great folks at Correlation. I highly recommend you checking them out if you haven't already.
Yeah, very cool stuff. So easy to implement too. I was just working on some of the stuff this weekend, and it's just really, it's a pleasure when it's easy to connect to stuff and to work with the people.
Yep. Phenomenal.
Who's going to be on today? I have a rumor, and I don't know if he's here yet. I haven't looked, but John Ainsworth said he would join us, because if he does join us, we're going to talk about something that I think it's going to be a cannabis episode a little bit, but we'll talk about it. We have a new sponsor, Member Pass, which is Bonify, powered by Bonify, formerly I believe it was Seal Ledger, and of which I'm one of the founders, and super excited about the things that him and I have been talking about. I believe that the time has finally come, not for crypto, but for blockchain. I think that we're starting to see and hats off to John for just force of will, sort of pushing it through and being an advocate and a leader, both in the NCUA, regulatory and with the major Qs. So no one in the world could have done that job except for John, because it's half tech and he's really great at that, and it's half, sort of almost being a politician and working with everybody. So we just really lucked out and got a great leader there. Yep. So if you haven't checked it out, check out Member Pass, and we'll talk about more of it today. And I'll take this one. You can take the next one. We've already mentioned it. See broadcast, and you know where to find us, Big Fintech. Let's get going, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So I don't think John's here, but there was a question I wanted to ask Alan. And so, Alan, if you're still here, would you mind coming back on the screen?
Oh yeah,
man, we are blessed with a whole lot of people. We've got John Janklius here today, another one of my absolute favorite people. And I'm going to give this question to him too, as a
shout out to Nimbus,
CEO, and now Nimbus. Yep. So, Alan, what? Yeah, I know. What keeps you up at night these days? That's that's my CEO question, right? What 3 things are keeping you up lately, as you're looking out into the future? And I know you guys have just a tremendously successful organization, but having gotten to know you a little bit, I know you're continuously reevaluating that. So what's keeping you up?
The number one thing is just the disruption that's going on in all facets of our business. We have parties nipping at every possible revenue stream we have and every potential service. So, the pace of change that's required to be competitive has never been more rapid. And then just managing that, we're a decent sized credit union. There's a lot of bigger ones than us, but just the people you need, whether it be in the data warehouse or people who understand technology, and people are willing to adapt and change at an ever quicker pace, it's exhilarating, but it's a challenge. And I really fear for many credit unions and many businesses, their ability to survive. And, I guess, the second thing you asked for three, that'd be the main one, but the second thing would just be the impact of the pandemic and everything that's seemingly sprung from it, whether it be racial strife or political discord amongst everybody. I mean, when we communicate to members, we need to be really careful when we do that we don't, anger a portion of our membership. Things that in the past, if you're serving the underserved, you need to be really clear. That's what we're doing. Serving the underserved as opposed to assisting a particular minority group, for example. So just keeping everybody moving forward, doing what we're all about, our mission, vision, and not being disrupted by any of that political strife is a big deal. And then I guess the third thing, since you asked for three, just be this rate environment. Obviously a challenge for everybody. NIM compression is a thing with everybody in the industry. We've had a really strong year this year, in part because of low charge-offs. But if charge-offs just return to historic norms before NIM widened, I think the entire industry would be pressed to grow its capital at the same pace that its assets are growing.
I love those answers. And I want to ask two follow-up questions. On the first one, I get the feeling that as I was listening to you and when I was in your meeting and just now, that as a leader, one of the things, and I found this is on others' minds as well, is the organizational structure. Seemed like that was something that both your chairman and you were sort of wrestling with a bit. And does the current structure meet your needs, and can it evolve fast enough? Is that putting words in your mouth, or?
That's definitely an issue. Yeah, and it's in part because technology is becoming just such an important part of every facet of our business. I came up through the finance ranks, as many current CEOs did. I'm not so sure that CIO technology side of the house may be the best place to find those folks who succeed my generation.
Yeah, and that's interesting because a lot of folks I know who are CEOs were often promoted from the CFO position. Kevin Johnson, the CEO of Suncoast, and I had long discussions about that when he was in the running for that meeting. He's like, they're never going to put a CTO in charge. And I said, I don't know. I said, you have a finance background as well. So I do think that there's a little bit of both to be had, but you can't ignore either. And that's where the challenge is going to be. We can't let that pendulum, because the rate environment, the margins, what you just said, one of the things we sent out a note for this meeting to ask people what they wanted us to talk about. And you hit on one, which was the charge-off environment. And, we talked about it a bit in regards to artificial intelligence, which is the upcoming and somewhat already in place CECL requirements to go from being historical to predictive. And I think what I'm hearing when I hear you talk about that is, now that you've seen that data, both from a historical side and possibly a predictive side, it definitely is giving some value in the sense of, how do I prepare the organization if it were to return to net normal, pre-pandemic, I guess, numbers is what you were saying, right?
Yeah, I mean, unless the federal government is ready to drop another $6 trillion into the economy in the next 12 months, it's not going to be like the last 12 months.
Yeah. It's got to break somewhere. Yeah. As the great Zeppelin said, when the levee breaks. And so
I like your musical analogies.
Yeah, we're going to keep going with music today. Well, thank you, Alan. I'd like to get some feedback, and I don't know if you know Mr. Jankulis. I've had the great pleasure of working with him for a long time, and since he's here, John, would you mind? Are you able to pop up and talk for a little bit?
How's that? You hear me okay?
What? Indeed. There he is. Look at him. He always has the coolest backgrounds. And ladies and gentlemen, that is not a green screen. Yeah, that's the real deal.
That's a comfortable chair back there, John.
About every hour or so, I report back there. And I have all those books that I promised to read so I can get smart. Well, there they sit, you know.
I was going to say, isn't that where the dogs sit too? So you got to have both.
We have a new Labrador, and she's tearing up the house. So yeah, she's part of the chair equation.
Fun.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, John, so I'm going to ask you, you're not too far out of being the CEO of one of the most progressive cranes in the country, Partners, and now you're in charge.
John, you froze on me.
Oh, okay. You seem to be back. All right. So talk to me a little bit about, what your concerns were in relation, and now you're in the driver's seat of a very progressive, system, platform. How did those two things get married? Maybe I'd love to hear a little of that story, because I think it was interesting and a genius move to say, well, if we got to solve problems for the cranes and that's what we're in business for, let's get someone who knows what those problems are at the helm. So that was a fascinating choice. And they couldn't have, I told you that when you got the job, they couldn't have chose anyone better. So yeah, share a little if you don't mind.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I was on the road to retirement, for those folks who don't know, running Partners for 17 years. And I thought, I could work a couple more years, or I could move into consulting, because I really wanted to help the movement. And then Nimbus came along, and it's a QSO that is, modern technology. But more than that, we bring the talent, to run your call center, your operations, compliance, legal, whatever we need, so we can real quickly launch a new instance of the credit union as little as 90 days. And if it's more complex, a little bit more than that. So that's kind of the work that we're doing. And, being out on the road, John, again, I've probably met with, 45 executive teams. And back to your theme about what folks are talking about, it's growth, right? That's what they're talking about. And then against these players that are out there that are really formidable. And, the thing that I worry about is that we work really hard just to be as good as, rather than better than. And so, how do you do that? And, talent is a big deal. And I think going forward, one of the things we're going to need to do is just be masters at working with ecosystems. More and more of the talent is going to be outside the organization, be able to execute and grow. And that's a new skill set. And I don't know if that is, I'm generalizing here, but who the CFO was and who will become the master of managing a big ecosystem. Maybe not, because I think that's a big deal. These growth initiatives are going to have to be led, and they're going to be through complex ecosystems. So, what kind of person is that, who can run something like that?
Wow.
You said something, and it was something, I think I stole it from you. I also think I probably gave you credit, but at Alan's offsite, I said, you're in business right now to out-partner the competition. And I remember you and I sort of coining that when we were, the day you let me go out and stand on the desk and asked all of your call center if they actually use your platform. He actually let me go outside, stand on the desk, and he stood with me, and we got everyone's attention. And Alan, you remember the little thing I did where I said, how many of you have Amazon and how many of you have the card? We did that one.
Yes.
And John was, to his credit, he took it on the nose there. And I think he didn't fire all of them on the spot. I think they got walked out after I went back in the room, but that is not him at all. He's the world's nicest guy. But the second thing was, it was not lost on, we asked him how many of you actually have used or done an RDC or done, and that number was surprisingly small. And so as we look at this partnering and this ecosystem, and I said something, I told Alan and him I was being funny. I have my two big jibes, which was, why isn't Amazon a bank? Because they don't want to be. For God's sakes, he went to space the other day. If he wanted to do it, he'd do it. And my second one was this idea that when you bring someone on, like, and you're learning this as a vendor, so welcome. Although you've always had that mindset, which has been really nice. But when you bring someone on, they want all your documentation and all your papers. And what I said is, hey, where are your papers? And I was kind of making the point that it's got to go both ways. And we often kind of have the vendors come in and we say, hey, listen, you've got to fit in here, make it happen. Here's a hammer, here's a chisel, as opposed to having a parking spot for them, having a map to that parking spot, and also having, everything lined up on when they can park there and all the details and documentation. And I don't know if you've ever gotten that as a vendor. So far, I have not seen it. But if there was an onboarding document that said, oh, welcome, here's our API, here's all our systems, here's all of this, we've signed NDAs, here's how you find everything. It's a start. We know you'll have questions, but so I'll let you speak. I know I've given you 100 things. So whenever I see John, I get excited. So.
Oh, well, John, we wrote that strategy of the credit union as is almost like a small pamphlet or book. And we use that for our employees, for volunteers, and for our business partners too. And I tried to do the same thing, is ask back and say, what are you doing? And matter of fact, why don't we get together quarterly? Because I'm really concerned about how you're doing. And in the partnership thing, I talked about it being the platinum rule. We all know the golden rule, do unto others if you would have them do unto you. The platinum rule says as they want to be treated, right? And I really tried to work hard in my business partner saying, what makes it work for you? What are you trying to do? Because I really care about a healthy ecosystem. You're part of it. How do I help you thrive? And I know that can sound a little Pollyannish, but if you don't, you're leaving a big piece of risk as you outsource more and more of your business to others and partnerships, that there's volatility there and risk there if you don't manage a really healthy and strong ecosystem and understand, what's happening with them, because if you can get ahead of it, if you can see things the way they really are, is the way I put it, then you got a shot at managing it. So why not be proactive, waiting to hear about it? Why don't you go find out what matters to them and how things are going? So just trying to get ahead of the curve by just being proactive and thinking,
I remember.
Like
you used to meet with us as one of your vendors and partners, as you would call us, which I love, and share that information with us. Alan, did you have a question? I see you unmuted.
Nope.
So from the perspective of, and this is a question to Alan and you, if you had to say, if you had to look in your crystal ball, and by 2022, you said, I have X amount of new fintech partnerships. And John, this is from, the Nimbus side or even the correlation side. All of those guys do things like that. But put your credit union hat on. Is it 2X? Is it 5X more of where it is today? So I'll let Alan go first because I see you pondering, and I'll put Alan on the spot. He got to be quiet for a bit.
Yeah, we have, as you know, John, what we call our 5 big initiatives, which is really the tactical way we're meeting our mission, vision, goals. And one of those 5 is Fintech Partnerships. And what that's about, just historically, we've had a core competency, like perhaps every credit union, in compliance. We're really good at it. It's institutionalized throughout the organization. And we want that level of competency around our ability to partnership, particularly with fintechs. And, we brought in some folks in the first year of that last year, like Posh and Illumina Labs, who have made big differences. We're trying to develop a product kind of like Erica, and it's a multi-year project, but through Posh, we got a significant start on that with our first launch just 12 months ago. And Illumina Labs is providing voice authentication, a biometric that was initially developed in partnership with Homeland Security. So kind of, we had a couple last year, and I'm sure we'll have a 2 or 3 each year going forward, 2 or 3 new ones. I mean, each one is obviously a big project in and of itself. But if I were to look out 4 or 5 years, I'm confident we'll have dozens of partnerships like that. And that'll kind of define the success of our strategy, our ability to do that and develop good, deep partnerships. And again, to develop a competency in onboarding new partners similar to the strength we've always had in compliance.
Yeah. And what struck me in the way when John said that, it did kind of strike me that I would respectfully argue a little bit that whatever you think it is, double it. And here's why, because I think that we're going to continue to see a lot of really cool whiz bangs as some of this new tech hits, particularly around AR. And I still think there's another, 2 or 3 more at the pace of change that we're seeing, revolutionary technologies, whether they're related to crypto, which we had some great discussion, blockchain as another discussion. And so, and I think you were at the top of this. You were saying, I got to build a core competency, not only in getting that done, but more importantly, maintaining it, and then providing dynamics and context to the rest of the book of business so that they're not these single silos.
Yeah, and maybe there'll be some exponential growth, but as CEO, it's really important for me to have early wins, to have successes. So make sure we do it right so that we get everybody on board with where we're going. So, I mean, I believe more than anybody in fast fail, but we definitely want to have wins that we can point to and get everybody excited.
Fast wins are good too.
Absolutely.
John, what's your, from sitting in both chairs now you on one side, you saw how difficult it is, as Alan was just pointing out, to bring all those on. They're not small projects. They're definitely complex. It requires almost a force of will. There's always like that one person, and they're always really, really tired, and they drink a lot of coffee. And, they're the ones that drive those projects, they get them out the door. And now you're sitting on the other side as being sort of that person trying to push that along. What's your perspective?
I think you started the conversation with saying about, partnerships to get it done. And here at Nimbus, we have a whole group that does nothing but that, who's evaluating what partnerships are we going to need after you ask the question, buy or build, to complete your technology roadmap, right? Just in time for your customers. And so we have a group that does nothing but that, looking at that. And that's new for me, to just really try to keep my eyes open. One of the reasons why I jumped into this lunch session, John, is just to listen about what is going on out there. And so, yeah, that's a big piece for us, is building our own ecosystem to support, our roadmaps and where things are going. And what has been extremely helpful is just as many listening posts as possible. So what do I mean by that? I mean, I get on the road and I go meet with executive teams and try to listen to their strategy. I was at Western CUNA Management School teaching a class called Digital Leadership. And that put me in front of like 200 executives for 12 hours just to talk about the topic. And so I really try to use that 2-to-1 rule of listen twice as much as I talk, and believe it or not, we really bake all that back in, right? What is the market saying? What are folks saying? What are on the drawing boards of folks as far as what they're trying to do in order to get to growth, and saying, okay, well, all that factored in, let's try to be on our part, agile, listening, backfilling gaps, make things happen. So, that's just kind of the learning loop that we're on to inform, what are the partnerships and what do we need to do?
I love that you call it a learning loop. I learned so much from reading your books and hanging out with you. He's like, if you've ever seen Silicon Valley, remember the dude that had the triangle of success or whatever it was, the hexagon of success? But yours is real and actually works. But that was always a fun show. Well, let's make sure you get to listen. So I'm going to jump over and I want to throw it to my friend Gary Coates. Gary's at a credit union in Oregon and Winona. He's always telling us he's a huge data analytics guy. And one thing he's always been good at is growth. The other day, and I'm going to use it, I got those notes from you. He sent me the original home banking platform pictures that him and I put together, which might have been the second or third in the country it was back when Corellium was still owned by First Tech. And you know what's funny? They hold up. They don't look bad, even by today's standards. And this is like 1997. So we'll have to show those. But Gary, you want to talk a little bit about, what you're being asked as a CTO, a vice president of IT, in terms of growth and the challenges you face?
Yeah, every credit union wants to grow. The challenge is having the infrastructure in place to be able to do that. And if you don't, you've got to build it. And we're a smaller credit union, and we want to grow. We're building a new branch right now, but those things are expensive. So you need to have the infrastructure from an IT perspective to be able to grow. I'm in the process of growing my team. I've got a small team of 3 right now, adding a 4th here pretty soon. And something we've talked about, John, I really want and advocating for getting a programmer on staff, because there are some automation benefits that we would get, and trying to outsource that just hasn't been working. And so I need to, and I know somebody that I want to bring on board because I have experience working with them. But yeah, and those screenshots or that little demo that I sent you, those were all written in frames back, I think it was HTML4.
Yep.
And it was pretty good, a pretty good layout for the beginning of the Voyager online banking application.
Yeah, it was. And it was interesting because even back then we would call Voyager a platform. So let's switch up on that. You know, we just had a question from the chat here, and she said, John, she asked me, and I think me, there's a couple Johns, but I'm gonna answer and assume it's me to begin with. So what do you see as a major focus for road mapping from credit unions? Is it product based, platform, service, or process? I honestly think if you ask me, I would say platform, because platform is the base link for the rest of those items that you mentioned. And it's the part we got to get right. My big fear, and I've talked about this with a lot of credit unions, is as these whiz bangs arrive, they sort of get tucked into nooks and crannies of the organization. And one of the big that's fine as you're sort of cobbling together a digital experience through sort of I would say less than coherent services and features. And examples I'll use are RDC is a great example. RDC has a nice little feature, which is whenever you use RDC, it reads the MICR line on the bottom, and that MICR line is the exact same thing that we try to use all the time for ACH. It's one of the hardest things to get the members to do. It's like, okay, this part, because they're not finance guys, they don't know check digits and all that crap. But if we had a way of just saying, okay, write void on it and take a picture of it, and we'll just read all that information and take care of the rest. Now, that's an idea that's a little past its time, thanks to Plaid, but the reality is that's an ingredient that is in RDC that could be reused in several other processes, whether it be onboarding for growth. One of the big challenges with growth is the pledge. And the other big challenge is, and I actually heard this said, and it made me laugh. Apparently they must have had a discussion, but somebody said, yeah, we gotta, it's not just about taking the reservation. That's not the important part, which was a reference to a Seinfeld episode, which I absolutely love, which is he showed up to get a car and they said, we don't have one. He said, but I had a reservation. And he said, well, yeah, you did, but it's kind of like you show up to get on the plane. They go, we oversold it. And you go, well, I bought a seat. That doesn't seem right to me. But that process of moving through that and looking at a platform as those connectivities. And then, as I mentioned, probably the biggest and most important thing is the governance process. Somebody's got to walk in and, one of my favorites is, ask any CEO how many members they have. Then go ask a couple other people on the senior staff and see what you get. I'm pretty sure the CEO's answer is from the 5,300, but it's a hard number. It's a hard number to really deduce. And, there's a lot of that's out there. But how are we going to, if we sit down and we dream up the platform and we build this very connective base link that allows for that exchange of data, then I believe the future of everything is going to be AI. And if it's not all connected in a way that data can be piped into these AI services for context, for inference, then you're not going to get the value of that. And we just had, you would love this, John. We had Peter Diamandis come talk to our innovation club, and he talked about exponential technologies. 5G was an example. AI was a big example. And the exponential technologies are only good. They're only exponential when they're fed the right data and when they're fed the right things. And that's going to be our challenge, to not let that get sharded or fractured into the organization, like shuffling a deck of cards and then one day have this huge big movement to unwind all this spaghetti to try to get to the point. And that's where you get people going, oh, well, we just want to start over. We want to reset the core, and we don't want any custom code. We just, I'm John. I remember you going through that because you felt like it was the only way to unwind that spaghetti. And that's because there wasn't and John, I'm not banging on you, were there for a long time, but we had this discussion. I know you can take it, but that's because there wasn't a focus on that core, on the platform as a regarded standard within the organization. Like if you go to somewhere like USAA, like they have names for those things. Like I think Suncoast is named for their platform. It's called Einstein. Everybody in the whole place knows it's called Einstein. Hey, check Einstein, go to Einstein, Einstein this, Einstein that. It's not, I'm not saying, but they started building that years ago. And So we've got to sort of figure out what our platform is and create that, because it's disingenuous to think that, no offense, John, but that the cores are going to do it. I think they'll be as open as they can, but I don't think they're going to be the base link. I think we have always been the base link, and the most important part of that base link is our people. I'm done off my soapbox. I'll get down. All right. Hopefully, you want to comment on that? Anybody on my assumption there? Alan or John or Kevin Sarber or anybody? Gary and I talked about this for years. We were always dreaming up building a platform. Wasn't going to be called Einstein, though. I think it was going to be Tesla.
The challenge is that for the longest time, the cores like held all the keys to the kingdom. And that's why online banking, early days of online banking, was a challenge, because you had to go to the core to get access to the system. And that we kind of broke through with that with the early version of Personal Branch, where we had it actually was a bank of modems that called a PC that then through a serial connection connected to the host system to be able to get balances and all that. And that was a challenge to get that far, because they knew that they owned all the keys to the kingdom, and they could resist letting you in. And that's why you had to go to the core for everything, and everything was really expensive, and it took a really long time to implement. And with fintechs now, they're finding a little niche that makes one thing remove a whole bunch of friction, and that's how they're getting success. And we've got to learn from that.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things I've been telling a lot of folks is everybody needs to run some jobs on Plaid. Plaid has been an exponential jump for the number of fintechs that are being connected. Most credit unions that we've, John, one of the things we've been doing is running a crypto report. And we've been trying to work out what the details of that are, because they're murky, right? There's a lot of exchanges. There's a lot of ways to look at it. There's a lot of ways to cut that data. And what we've discovered, to Gary's point, is that we're starting to see where these guys are implementing Plaid as a platform, and Plaid takes out that barrier of that sending a small micro amount to be verified to get the money moved into the credit or out of there into their platform, whatever it may be. It could be any number of things. And most everybody in the crypto reports has seen their numbers triple in the amount of money out, and less than half coming back in terms of deposits and the return, which is kind of the anti-growth, right? And that's another thing I'd love to get some perspective on from you and from Alan. So what is growth, right? So there's growth in the perspective of net new, right? And Alan, you mentioned indirect being sort of like, is that really growth? And I thought that was a fair comment I'd heard you say at some point. But then we talked about growth of how many of our members are only using 5 or 10% of our service. And if you went through their trade lines, how many billions of dollars would they have in other institutions? And it's actually pretty easy for us to find that if we did the numbers, we could beat almost every credit card rate. I don't know of any credit card that can beat, the problem is we can't beat their rewards. That's an issue that we've got to figure out that story, but I'll go back. So Alan, how would you describe that growth as, net new versus internal? And what do you think that it should be between those two things, the percentage, I guess, or the split? Oh, and you're on mute. Apologies. We may have muted.
Yep. Sorry about that. Yeah.
You know you were going to have to work when you came, huh? Sorry about that.
Yeah. What's up with that? For years, we were focused first and foremost on member growth. And I think, we were a big indirect shop, so we had huge growth in membership, but they weren't people who were really connected with the credit union. We do a loan, and we put out an enormous effort to onboard them, to make them what we call PFI members. But ultimately, the vast majority would pay off their loan and go away. So what we're focused on right now is growth of what we call contributing members, people who contribute to the cooperative and are really engaged. And in fact, we report in the call report our total membership, but we're really not concerned about what that number is. And at the end of the day, we believe that by powering people who are truly part of the cooperative, truly engaged with the cooperative, and growing that number, it'll grow three things that are really important to us. It'll grow loans, it'll grow deposits, and it'll grow the bottom line. You know, the 80-20 rule, you know, that everybody's heard about. I mean, when we looked at engaged contributing members, they were in that 20, and the 80, the folks who were in essence being subsidized by our engaged members, were those single service folks. So, you know, we believe that by growing that 80-20 to, you know, a more reasonable number, and right now we're at around just shy of 60-40.
Wow, that's a big
and
deal.
we're reaching to get that higher still. It's had a big impact on our bottom line, and we've intentionally given back a significant portion of that additional profitability to the community. You know, we're really focused on having initiatives that serve the underserved and youth. So, yeah, that we look at growth as powered by growth of contributing members, and we know if we grow those, that loans, deposits, and profitability will follow.
And John, to piggyback on that, so put your credit union hat on from the partner's perspective from those days. And, you know, did you even have that problem at Disney? I mean, is everybody a contributing member? Does a mouse beat them into it? They show up and go, hey, you know, Mickey,
Totally
yeah, you're gonna have to do this. And
totally impressed with Alan's split there, the 60-40. That's amazing. Most folks are living under the 80-20 rule. At Partners, we had hyper growth of low income designation households. And still, though, you know, their average loan, average deposit, to have what we call the fair exchange of value between the credit union and them, that was really hard to kind of keep that right in place, what I call really small wallets. But we actually had really high penetration, like our checking was 70% checking penetration, right? So, I mean, a lot of it has to do with your raw material that you have, your field of membership, and it's just as different from credit union to credit union as what I can appreciate. And also, too, there's like a maturity arc in a credit union's life to follow, too, where when you start, it's all about acquisition, right? Getting people just to show up and come, you know, and then it's to stay, and then it's to stay and to contribute, you know, the retention piece of those that do. And so it's interesting if you can use data to figure out where am I in my arc and where is my opportunities. And I like to start there with strategy before I go pick a technology solution. To me, those are just tools. But what does your strategy tell you, the granularity of growth, if you can get underneath that a little bit and figure out what's going on? I'm really keying on something that Alan said too earlier, I think is interesting, is can you see the diminishment in relationships based on all these players like Chime and Robinhood across your portfolio? Because those engines, if you could think about them all being small engines, are they growing or are they declining? And is there anything you can do to change that? And I think credit unions, where we need to start thinking about, that's true, we have portfolio momentum, we can understand that, respond to that. But over here are new routes to new markets. And our DNA tells us that we do it through a geographic focus. That's how we're built, with first thought, branching, field of membership, single sponsor, employers, SEG.
right. It's in our blood.
The whole world is shifted for growth, the new growth, it's in other channels, it's in digital. So we need to make that move to digital, but be focused on what kind of growth are we talking about, and then go pick your technology stack and capability stack to go get that growth for you. And it can be very different for every credit union based on your arc, where you're at, and what your opportunities are. Are you suffering from folks leaving? Are you suffering from, you know, we just don't have any new folks showing up, you know? So I know that was a long answer, but I like starting with a strategic look first.
But I want to dig in, you know, you've been on the road talking to everybody. Are when you talk to folks and you hear this growth concept as the CEO of Nimbus now, are you hearing that sort of conversation on where they're separating the contributed member growth from just sort of the crack line of indirect or whatever, or is it both, or what are you hearing as strategies, or is it just growth for growth's sake?
No, it's not growth for growth's sake. And I always, you know, just start the conversation by saying, give yourself a break. This stuff is really difficult. I know that, 17 years of doing it as a CEO.
Sure.
You know, and all those moving pieces. But if you can see things the way they really are, then you got a good shot at coming up with the right solution. So put some effort into that. And a lot of folks have. And I think the big headline is new routes to new markets. Like we need new growth. We need new ways of thinking about doing something. We need to think like a Chime, and that's okay. And is it okay just to go after deposits through one kind of channel and go through loans through another kind of channel? Does it have to be, we have to have the whole wallet? So I think those are some of the conversations around growth are saying, no, actually, I think I'm going to be a sniper too. I think I can deliver, digital technology and go after something exactly what I need, and then have another instance over here. And John, one of the things that's kind of cool about that is your cost structure to go get different products and services is different, rather than putting the whole burden of the whole credit union's operating expenses on top of trying to go acquisition when you just want to deposit. That's way expensive to do it that way.
Right.
So yeah, I think this is kind of differentiate and integrate back into a plan and kind of these pieces. And now that we have new data, I think that kind of really help with that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know yours. I knew the answer before I asked you, so I knew that. Alan, did you have a follow up to that? I saw you unmuted.
Yeah, I was just going to say there's some credit unions that have been really successful with digital growth, and the credit union movement is so willing to collaborate and share what's worked, what hasn't. Alliance One Credit Union that we look at, 12, 13 billion, originally from the airline industry, and currently have no branches, but are achieving some really great things in terms of value to their members and growth, and doing it all digitally.
Yeah, you look at BECU, another great example of shifting that service model to some extent, which is, it's hard. It's bred into us. We almost kind of just want to go. We're like the car salesman that doesn't want to sell you the car, but we want to be nice and take you for a ride and hope that you'll ask to buy it, as opposed to making an overt sale about how really good we are. And that is a cultural issue that has to be overcome. I think we do a good job in posters. I think we do a good job in a lot of ways, but just in the moments, in those random moments, the ones that are really key, when the members, service reps are having conversations with the members, there are those opportunities, and you see people who do it really well, but even then it's still sort of apologetic in a way. At least that's been my feeling and what I've heard. One quick thing, Gary just asked how you measure your contributing members, Alan, and Jennifer did a fantastic thing on that. And I know that's something that Gary does as well. He's big in the data. So Gary, maybe I'll just connect you to Jennifer and let her and you talk. I think you probably enjoy chatting with her, if she's allowed to. So we'll see.
Oh, absolutely.
But, I don't want to I don't want to put words in their mouth on what they can do and can't do.
Yeah, Jennifer is great at collaborating. Absolutely.
Yes. And her presentation on that was really fantastic because Gary, it was beyond what I would have considered. Kevin Sarber really put together a really incredible engaged member sort of platform for Westcom. And it was really well done. It was a scorecard. It told you how engaged you were. And I saw something similar, for Alan and his team. So I think that's a high encouragement to get people to engage, because the other problem is just education, the co-op itself. Did you know this? I found this out the other day. This blew my mind. Ace Hardware, it's a co-op. I had no idea. Did you know that, John?
Yeah.
It's a co-op. I found out was like, I said, yeah, I was joking with some guy because they didn't have the bolt I needed. I'm like, I'm going to call the owner. He goes, you're looking at him. I said, what? Oh God, did I stumble into, what's the name of that show? Secret Boss? Oh no. Secret CEO. But no, it's a co-op. It's owned by all the employees. And it's interesting how it's operated. He was telling me about marketing and those sorts of things, but I've been working and thinking about co-ops for 27 years and didn't know. I was out in Tennessee and there's a giant building that just says co-op, and it's a farmers co-op. Now they know it, which is kind of the roots of our where we came from as organizations. So it's just, it's fascinating to me, but I think defining what your engaged member is actually going to be a really sort of personal and important thing to each credit union. I'm not sure there's going to be I'm not sure there's going to be sort of a one size fits all template. I think it's like, for example, I love John Janklius's conversation about being a sniper. Mortgages comes to mind when I think about that, right? I think Cranes have done a fantastic job of working with the mortgage CUSOs, working in the mortgage industry, getting people into homes who could never have had homes before, in spite of the pandemic and everything that's happened. It's literally a huge, in my mind, success story from what I've seen of the books of the Cranes I've talked to. And that is definitely sniper work. Wouldn't you agree, John?
Absolutely. I mean, go look at Logix, what they've done. They went out and looked at who their main competitor was as far as, time to answer. And they just put together a beautiful program. They're rocking it. That's a really good example of somebody who, decided to be a sniper. And that mattered to them, and they went after it. They got
Logix is the old Lockheed, right? Out in, yeah.
Yeah. And
So,
our definition of a contributing member is somewhat complex, but we really simplify it because we find that two things are incredibly strongly correlated with being a contributing member. Two simple things. Is your direct deposit with us? That's number one. And number two, is our card top of wallet? And if the answer to those two is affirmative, then you're almost certainly going to be a contributing member.
That's like I was telling the story about all the research we did in the Innovation Club. We hired somebody from outside the industry in like 2017 to do machine learning, and the question was how could we tell before we have a lot of data on a member or too much data on a member whether they're going to be a digital member or a sort of in-person member. Obviously, that's all out the window now because of the pandemic, and the reason for that is that it's a lot of CTOs in my Innovation Club, and they're all looking around going, hey, I want to get more budget. People sneeze at building 10 million for a building off the road over there, but I got to fight for 35,000 to implement this fintech thing. And so what they wanted to do was to prove that. And they did all this work, and we checked how far people were, whether it was a right turn to get there, where they worked, if there were any branches on the route from their home to their office, like all this incredible stuff. And it boiled down to one simple thing, which was if you bought stuff from Walmart over the counter, you were like 98% likely to use a branch physically. If you bought on Amazon, you were about 98% likely to be the digital member and do all your business via the digital channels. So sometimes I think Alan makes a good point that we can make it too difficult, and maybe it isn't that difficult, and maybe it is just a matter of getting to do just a few things. We're getting close to the end here. I wanted to give. I saw Cynthia was on. Hey, Cynthia Schroeder, you there?
I am, John.
I wanted to chime in. I know Ty's perspective on all this. Or did wanted to, and you're really heavily looking at like, I thought, their organization and I are working very closely together on crypto, and they see an opportunity to serve those members. And one of the things that the question that I've put out there is, as we do this crypto reporting, is why? And we actually had, I'm going to share a little bit, but at Alan's meeting, and I keep going back to it was just a really great weekend, and I can't thank you enough for having me. And one of his people was she came from the community college, which is a new seg for them, and they're really pushing in that area, which I thought was quite awesome for them. And she said her husband I asked who owned crypto. By the way, I remember my little saying. Here's my new meme for you, John. It's working in finance and not understanding crypto is like working at Blockbuster and not understanding streaming. Anyways, you can tweet that one out if you want. But she said that her husband had done it to diversify their portfolio, but also that I felt like, and she was afraid of it to some extent, but he was handling it. But she also said that they don't see it. The millennials don't necessarily see another way to create wealth or a better way. Like the stock market's too much for them. The mortgages haven't been simple for them to make their way into. How else will they build wealth? Now, to be fair, there's a little instant gratification and kind of a casino mind around it now. So it's not the best opportunity. But Cynthia, you were thinking that those members, if we could figure out what they were trying to do, if we could figure out what the mindset was, that would be an incredible opportunity for growth. You want to share a little bit about Ty and you thinking about, or you guys is thinking about that?
Yeah, it's all about awareness right now. That's really what I've been charged with is building the awareness for Visions and our employees and our members and just our senior leaders, and especially Ty. Ty wants to understand everything there is about cryptocurrency, what it offers us, what it doesn't, what may be a disruptor. So we are spending a lot of time. We just updated our data that we pulled, John, and we've really dug into it to look at the ages and really to see who is using cryptocurrency. Really interesting information.
It's all millennials, right? Everybody's between
25 to 40.
See, it's not though. I mean, that's the numbers, but yeah,
that's what it shows from our members right now. Yeah. That's the majority.
I actually shared, because you guys are both part of the IC, and I shared your members, the last round of numbers you sent me with Alan and his team to show just a perspective on that other team or on another grade. And by the way, Cynthia's with Visions Grading out of Albany, and Ty Muse is her CEO, a very awesome guy, also very scary because he's very tall and sometimes he puts his hand on my head and I feel kind of afraid. And I would tell him that in person. Well, we're coming up on the 155. And so, man, this is not totally the direction I wanted to go today, but man, I was blessed to have a few people. And if I'd be like, hey, if I found Alan, and this is the cool part about this online meeting, I would never get John and Alan to bump into each other in the hallway somewhere and be able, or and Gary and all the other people on this call. So I hope everybody's gained some perspective on that growth. And that, those subjects, I'm just going to say it over and over: platform. Something has to sew all this stuff together. Something has to hold this together. It cannot be gum and paper clips. And that dude we hired once that was at the bar who has really long hair now, and we're pretty sure is taking advantage of the new cannabis laws. We got to have a team with backup and true security and all the other, and we didn't even get into security and quantum and ransomware and all the other things that go with it. And I do think those are the things that it's not surprising, that keep you guys up at night. Any last words? Alan, you want a final thing? I kind of just beat on you. I'm really sorry. You probably showed up just to listen in.
I could give you a heads up.
Program, but I learned a lot, and I hope everybody else did.
Well, this is my first one of these meetings, so I'm kind of the newbie, and I'm sure you guys have talked about it in the past, but for a future one, more discussion around crypto, and NYDIG and NCR and others have, are rolling out a product later this year to allow credit unions who use DI, and I believe at the end of the day, most of the platforms to offer crypto to their members. And a lot of issues around that I won't go into now, but it's something maybe we could discuss at a future town hall.
No, we will. We absolutely will. As a matter of fact, Cynthia and I are getting ready to work on a crypto conference for credit unions that we are planning to try to put together either in the spring of 2022 or the fall. We're talking about how we're going to pull that together. And John, I often told you I wanted to do an unconference. Well, that's going to be what we're going to do. We're going to bring in like Chris Hughes, who is, he definitely is the long-haired guy you found in the bar, but he's probably the smartest cryptologist and blockchain person I know. And the only one to crack a tall boy on my town hall. So that was impressive. But hey, if you're there are new members, right? We have to learn to live with that. But we absolutely will be doing that. And Cynthia, you had talked about possibly getting someone from NYDIG. I still would like to, catch up with you on that.
Yes. Yep. So
that's part of this. And then the other part is just to share what's working, what's not working, even in the current environment. Lawson's calling it CryptoCon. I don't know. That sounds like a hacking thing. I don't know. I wanted to call it Crypto Share. We were talking about share accounts and how those words mean pretty much nothing to anyone. Well, with that, it's 2 minutes till. I can't thank you all enough. John, please reach out and catch up. Alan, wow. I'm so sorry for putting you on the spot, but I hope you'll come back, and you will definitely. We're taking next week off, everyone. It's the holiday. I hope everyone enjoys the long weekend. We generally do that when it's because we find that most people take a couple extra days, and it's just easier that way, but we'll be back on the 15th. And we are looking at a couple of big guests. I've been shaking the bushes again for some guests. So, but at the same time, I'm happy doing this and just learning from everyone. So, and we did reach out and ask for some topics. Cecil was one of them. The platform was another. What's going to happen to repossessions? That was an interesting one. I can tell you what I think will happen. All cars are going to have AI and Tesla. You won't have to repossess them anymore. You'll just, you'll summon them home. With that. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks,
Thanks, John. Good to see everybody.
Take care.
Talk to you.